in that Christmas thing where you steal gifts.
You're on.
Yeah.
We're on. Good morning. Welcome to United States Sports Academy and our weekly sports talk program. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the first week of the basketball tournament. Hope your bracket's perfect. I know for a fact that if you're playing the ESPN game, you do not have a perfect bracket because the last perfect bracket fell last Friday night in one of the games. They made the announcement on ESPN. And also an interesting fact, Ben pointed this out to me yesterday, and I also heard it on TV later. There were over 19 million brackets filled out on the ESPN game, and right now 18 of them have the Sweet 16, have all the teams in the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
So they may have lost a couple games in the first round,
Yeah.
but their teams won in the second round. So, I'm not a math major, but 18 out of 19 million means you basically have less than a 1 in a million chance of having the Sweet 16. I think before the tournament started, somebody said there was a 1 in 4.3 quintillion. I don't even have any idea how many zeros are in that number, but I'm guessing it's a bunch.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of zeros. Anyway, my bracket's perfect because I do it with a pencil and an eraser. No, actually, I've only got 11 teams in the Sweet 16, and I had SMU going to the Final Four, so I'm pretty much done.
Yeah.
How's your bracket look there, Dr. Simmerman?
Well, I've still got some teams alive. I've got 9 teams in the Sweet 16. And 3 of the 4 teams that I've had in the Final Four are still alive.
Mm-hmm.
Oregon, UCLA, and West Virginia.
Cool.
If Duke would have beat South Carolina, my bracket would be looking really good right now. But Duke losing, that was my national champion. So I'm pretty much done as far as that goes. But my West, Midwest, and South still look really good as far as Elite 8 and Final Four. I could get all those, but Villanova and Duke in the East absolutely destroyed my bracket there, and I know a majority of people that really screwed up a lot of brackets.
The right side of the bracket actually looks pretty good. I got 7 of the 8 teams in the Sweet 16 on that side. The left side of the bracket's a total disaster. Before we get in depth into the men's bracket, we'll do our weekly update of
On the
women's
women.
bracket, also known as the UConn Invitational.
Mm-hmm.
And who
you know,
UConn's next victim is.
They've won 2 games so far by a combined total of almost 100 points, and now they have to go on the road all the way from Storrs to Bridgeport, Connecticut for their next 2 games. They've got UCLA Saturday night, and the winner of Maryland and Oregon.
If they beat UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if they beat
Yeah.
UCLA. They're at 109 wins in a row, which is silly. I mean, it's actually kind of stupid to think about.
Yeah.
As Ben pointed out to me a couple weeks ago, it's hard to get up for work 109 days in a row on time. So what they've done is phenomenal. There's a couple. We can sit here until 1 o'clock talking about statistics with Gino Auriemma and UConn, but we'll just throw a couple of them at you. They have Gino Auriemma is 1 win short of Pat Summitt's record for number of tournament wins. So if they win their 2 games this weekend and go to the Final Four, he'll tie her on Saturday night and pass her on Monday with the most number of tournament wins all time. They're going for the 5th straight national championship, which nobody's ever done in the women's side. UCLA obviously won 7 in a row in the 60s and 70s, and the list just goes on and on. Ben was asking me this morning about, does anybody know the last time UConn lost a tournament game? The answer was...
It was 2012 in the Final Four to Notre Dame in overtime.
Yeah.
Since then, they've won 26 straight tournament games in a row, which I know the 109 is impressive, but to me the 26 is even more impressive because they're going against the cream of the crop in a one-and-done situation where if you even have a bad 5 minutes in one of those games, you could be out. So 26 tournament wins in a row.
Probably if we didn't do this, but I'll bet if you went back and looked at UCLA when they won 7 in a row, they probably didn't win 26 games because the field was much smaller back then.
Yeah, the field would have only win 3 or 4 games probably to win a championship. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. So my women's bracket's really good. If my men's bracket was as good as this, I'd have a chance to win something. But I've got 14 of the 16 teams in the women's bracket. The the first 2 nights I was 31-1. The only loss I took was Quinnipiac
The surprise of the
beating
women's
Marquette,
tournament.
and then they went and beat Miami in the second round.
Mhm.
So they're a 12 seed in the Sweet 16, and I have UConn, Washington, Texas, and Florida State going to the Final Four, and UConn beating Texas in the championship game. So all of those are still good for me. And I know all of us picked UConn, so there's no big
Well, all the
surprise.
top seeds are still in it. Notre
Mhm.
Dame. I have UConn going against Notre
No, there's a
Dame.
couple One seeds that got beat.
No, not on the women's
No,
side.
not in the women's
Not on
side.
the women's side.
Duke was a 2 seed. They got knocked off, and that actually helps UConn if you believe the seedings.
Yeah.
I had Maryland beating Duke anyway, so that's I think Maryland was seeded
And,
horribly. We were talking about this earlier. We'll go back to the men's bracket now. You've got Xavier in as an 11 seed. Other than that, you've got a couple 7s, and you got I believe 2 7s and an 8. But
Yeah, the madness wasn't as mad this year.
no, it's not, because you look in the East, you've got what 3, 4, 7, and 8. In the West, you've got 1, 4. Or you've got 1, 2, 4, and 7, and then in the South you got 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's been pure so far. And then in the Midwest we have 1, 3, 4, and 7. So not a lot of upsets. It kind of the one thing that's really I think impressive is the fact that the Southeast Conference, the Big 12 Conference, the Pac-12 Conference, and the Big 10 Conference all have 3 teams still alive. When everybody was ballyhooing the ACC before the tournament, they had 9 teams in, and they have 1 team left. In fact, the Big East has more teams than the ACC. Although I don't consider the Big East a mid-major when it comes to basketball.
No.
In football, definitely, but in basketball, I consider the Big East a power conference.
And I've been frustrated. A lot of people have said that Wisconsin beating Villanova is an upset. But to me, that's not an upset. I mean, you look at Wisconsin, 3 years ago, Final Four, 2 years ago, national runner-up, last year, Sweet 16, and they still have 2 players in their starting lineup that have started that whole time, in Bronson Koenig and Nigel Hayes. So obviously the seeding was off, but also calling that an upset is just bizarre to me. I know Villanova had a great run last year, but
They lost a lot of key parts to
yeah,
that team.
and so for Wisconsin to win that one, that to me is not an upset. I mean that should have been an Elite 8 game, maybe even a Final Four game. How good those 2 teams are.
Yeah, and we talked earlier a lot of these quote unquote upsets are only upsets if you look into the little numbers to the left of the teams on here, because the perfect example is Wichita State. Anybody who knows anything about basketball and who watched Wichita State play this year, they were not a 10 seed. And the teams that get hosed the most are teams like Dayton, who Dayton was a legitimate 7 seed, maybe even better than a 7 seed. Yet in the first round game they have to play Wichita State, who was
Only because they're 10 seed.
only because they're a 10 seed.
Yeah.
And for those of you who've been to Las Vegas and you see the size of those casinos, those people in Las Vegas didn't build those big casinos by being dummies.
Yeah.
And Wichita State was a 7.5 point favorite over Dayton in the first round. And then Wichita State gets hosted in the second round because as a 10 seed they have to play a 2 seed, where they should have avoided playing a 2 seed for at least one more round in the tournament. So the people who seeded, I don't understand. I thought Jay Billis's idea was that everybody on the committee should be basketball people. And I heard another guy, I think it was Seth Greenberg, say that these people are athletic directors, college presidents, and he said they spend their whole career doing really good things, and then they get to something so simple and they make it so complicated and they totally screw it up.
Yeah.
Well, do you think Jay Billis is right?
Yeah.
I do too.
I think what needs to happen, I've said this to a couple people, is I'm okay with the format now, but after the bracket is made and filled in and all the teams are put in place, there needs to be some sort of group of basketball people to take a look at and be like, no, Wisconsin's not an 8 seed, no, Wichita State is not a 10, and make those changes and then either send it back to the original committee to make them or they correct them themselves, because there really do need to be basketball people who watch these teams. They know Wisconsin, is not an 8 seed, even if they did struggle a little bit at the end of the year. You know, when it comes tournament time, they're not an 8 seed. They know Wichita State's not a 10 seed.
Yeah.
I mean, these are obvious things to me that stand out as just bizarre. How, you know, if these were basketball people, they would never happen like that.
And the comments that the Cincinnati coach made before the tournament started about that these guys will have never admitted, but it's all about money. It's all about matchups that can bring most people to gyms. He was 100% correct.
Yeah.
And I think the worst thing they ever did, and I know it's all about money, but from a pure basketball perspective, the worst thing they ever did was go into these pods and trying to get teams closer to home and move. The committee is actually allowed to move a team up one or down one to make better matchups. Seth Greenberg said you put them 1 through 68. You say we think Villanova, Kansas, North Carolina, whoever you think is the best team in the country. You put them at number 1. You go. You just go down order. You play the first 4, and then 1 plays 64, 2 plays 63, and you do it that way. You don't worry about where they are. You don't worry about Arizona's a 2 seed, or Villanova's a 1 seed, so we can't send them too far west. I mean, heck.
The only thing I watch out for though is conference teams being in the same bracket.
Yeah.
Like this one, they screwed it up because if Iowa State would have beat Purdue, Kansas would have had to play Iowa State in the Sweet 16. That should never happen. That would be the only thing that I would
We have a
change.
question.
You have some comments from a listener.
Okay.
First, going back to the women's bracket, Daryl says that the top seeds normally advance to at least the Elite 8. And now he says, I'm assuming it's a man. Sorry if you're not, Daryl. For the sake of conversation, what if they reseed within the region after each weekend?
They do that in hockey.
Yeah,
Hockey.
it's not.
They
a
do
bad
that in
idea.
D2
Yeah.
when they get to the Elite 8.
It's not a bad idea because then it creates a more dramatic Elite 8 if you've got the best 2 teams in the regional final. I kind of like that idea, but at the same time, this whole idea that it can just blast open a bracket if you have an upset, and it can make for some excitement there. If you have 2 Cinderella teams playing in the Sweet 16 and 2 heavyweights playing in the same region, but in the other Sweet 16, the story of George Mason may never have happened
Right.
if they had to play UConn in the Sweet 16 and then someone else in the Elite 8. They would have had to win 2 really tough games in a row. So I can see both ways.
Yeah, and he's right. I mean, some of the ugliest basketball scores ever are the first round of the women's tournament. When you have the 1s versus the 16s. I mean, did anybody see the Baylor score in their first round game? I think it was 109 to 30.
Yeah. It was.
And
very-
UConn scored 116 points. And I think I saw somewhere where UConn's 116 was the most points ever scored in the women's tournament in a game that did not go to overtime.
Wow.
So there's a much larger difference between the haves and the have-nots on the women's side than there is on the men's side.
And it would make filling out a bracket almost impossible. Because once you get to your Sweet 16, every person's bracket when they pick would have to be reseeded.
Right.
And it would screw everything up. So I don't think they're going to do that when so many.
Just the
19
people that make
million-
money off the tournament.
Yeah, when 19 million people are filling out a bracket. That's just on ESPN.
Yeah,
There's CBS has their own game.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their own game out there. Yeah, Daryl, thanks for the comment, and we agree with you about the women's seeds going through, reseeding them. It works in some sports. I think that the companies that make a lot of money off these brackets may have an issue.
It all comes down to money.
Yep, it does.
Always.
Okay, so enough about what's happened up to this point. Let's take a look at our bracket, at the real bracket, and forget about who you picked originally. Going forward, I think who do you think will be the Final Four, the championship game, and who do you have as your national champion? Brad, I'll start with you.
The Final Four, I've got Oregon, UCLA, West Virginia. They're still alive.
Mm-hmm.
And now in the East, I'll tell you what, I think Wisconsin can come out of that bracket,
Mm-hmm.
and I could see them being in the Final Four, and I would have them playing West Virginia, and I think UCLA will be Oregon, and I think UCLA will beat West Virginia for the national championship.
would that be UCLA's first national championship?
Since 1995.
Yeah.
Been
Yeah.
22 years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
It doesn't seem like it was that long ago.
I know.
the
To me,
Big
anyway.
the Big 12 and the Pac-12 can each have 3 teams in the final 4. The SEC and the Big Ten can't because Florida would have to play South Carolina
Mhm.
and Purdue would have to play Michigan.
Yeah.
So there's 3 conferences out there: the Big 12, the Pac-12, and the
Well, that was probably the biggest surprise game to me with Florida, the way they just manhandled West Virginia, or Virginia.
Virginia. Yeah.
I mean,
what,
they didn't even put up a fight.
Virginia scored like 12 points or something.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
like
39.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was ugly.
Bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I picked Florida.
Well, who do you got, Ben?
I agree. I think Wisconsin is a team to watch out for. They've got the experience and great coaching, and they don't turn the ball over. So I'm gonna switch. I had Duke. I'm gonna go with Wisconsin in the East. I agree on West Virginia. They're just playing great basketball right now, and that defense is. I think they're gonna beat Gonzaga pretty easily. So I've got Wisconsin and West Virginia, with West Virginia winning that. And then I'll stick with my picks in the Midwest and the South. I had Oregon and North Carolina. I'm going to stick with North Carolina. So I've got North Carolina, West Virginia final, and I'm going to go with North Carolina to redeem themselves after last year's runner-up finish.
They won that game with 2 seconds to go. Oh no, they tied
It tied,
They
yeah,
tied it.
yeah.
Yeah, I picked Gonzaga and Kentucky to play for the championship, and I'm going to stick with that. But looking at the East, to be honest with you, none of those 4 teams would surprise me.
No.
No,
Wisconsin, Florida, Baylor, South Carolina.
South Carolina's playing.
South
well.
Carolina
Yeah.
scored 64 points in the second half against Duke.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty stout.
Well, and Frank Martin's a great coach.
He is a great coach.
He made the Elite Eight at Kansas State back in 2010, so it's not like he had experience.
Right.
Great coach.
And all these teams have great guards.
I have Arizona.
You have Arizona going to
Arizona and North Carolina.
Arizona beating Gonzaga or West Virginia would not be a surprise.
Do you think Michigan can come out of that?
I think
I think so.
I think Michigan could.
Yeah.
I think personally, I think Kansas has impressed me the most of the teams that are left in the tournament as far as the quality of play. But that Purdue's a matchup nightmare for Kansas
Mhm.
with the big lad in the middle.
Caleb
Yeah.
Swanigan.
Caleb Swanigan is a beast.
Yeah,
And it's nice to see somebody with that size and to also have the athletic ability. He
Mhm.
also shoots almost 80% from the free throw.
Yeah.
Because with his size and strength, he's going to get fouled a lot.
Sure.
He's not like Shaq, who's an adventure every time he goes to the
Yeah.
line. I actually had Louisville coming out of the Midwest,
Mhm.
so I'll have to change that. I like Kansas and Michigan to play in the Elite Eight,
Mhm.
and I'll pick Kansas to come out of the Midwest, and I have Kentucky coming out of the South, so I'll stick with that. Although I guess I should be rooting for Butler, but I was born in Indiana, but I have to admit that the university has the person who the university is named after is not even a distant relative of mine. So I'll have Baylor, Gonzaga, Kentucky, and Kansas, with Kentucky and Gonzaga playing for the national championship and Kentucky winning.
So you have 3 Big 12 teams in your Final Four then.
I do.
Yeah.
I hope Baylor doesn't win. What if Baylor and Oregon play and they both wear those ugly?
Boy, that would be a messy.
Look like 10 highlighters.
That'd be
running
tough to
through.
watch.
Yeah.
Man, those things are ugly.
Yeah.
Okay. We hope we're running up our time. We have any more questions or comments from the?
This day in sports history.
Okay, yeah. Sarah's going to tell us about something that happened on March 22nd, sometime in our past.
In 1969, the 31st NCAA men's basketball tournament, UCLA beats Purdue 92-72 to win the 5th championship in 6 years.
That was 1969.
1969, March
Lou
22nd.
Alcindor was a senior,
Hmm.
and that was their third straight national champion. That was their fifth straight the third straight, 5th in 6 years, as you said. With 5 in 6 years, UConn's trying to win their 5th in a row, so they could match that. Of course, UCLA went on to win the next 2, to win 7 in a row, and they lost to North Carolina State in '74 in double overtime. David Thompson, Tom Burleson, and guys. That was Bill Walton's senior year. And then in '75, John Wooden announced his retirement, and they beat Kentucky in the championship game. Now, one interesting fact is that Kentucky and UCLA have only played twice. You think about all those national championships? They've only played twice in history in the tournament, and both times the winner of that game was the eventual national champion. Yes.
I'll report back on that game next week.
Okay.
And do you want the other one, the
Sure.
Stanley Cup? In 1894, the Montreal Hockey Club defeats Ottawa Generals 3-1 to win first ever Stanley Cup competition.
Still the greatest trophy in sports.
Stanley Cup.
The Stanley Cup. No doubt about that. All right, we hope everybody's bracket is recoverable this weekend. A lot of great basketball. 8 games on the men's side, 8 games on the women's side, so 16 college basketball games to watch this weekend.
Be talking about the
Ba-
Final
base-
Fours.
Baseball, getting into full swing in spring training. Tonight we've got USA versus Puerto Rico in the finals of the World Baseball Classic. Interestingly enough, the Americans have never won, and Puerto Rico's undefeated this year at 7-0. USA is 5-2, but as Ben and I were talking about earlier this morning, it's not only when you lose, but it's who you lose to.
Right.
And so the USA, even with their 2 losses, is in the championship game, 1 game away. Their starting pitching has been phenomenal for the U.S. In the tournament, and so we'll be watching that. We'll be rooting for the USA tonight, and be rooting for the teams that are left on my 11 teams left on my men's bracket, and my 14 teams left on my women's bracket this weekend. And we'll come back and talk about it next week. There's a chance that Coach Matt Graves
Gonna try to get a hold.
will join us again this year. He joined us last year when the Final Four was set and talked about it. Of course, he was the #1 assistant at Butler when they went to 2 national championship games in a row. Lost one on a heartbreaker when Gordon Hayward shot just barely didn't go in against Duke. And Ben and I were talking this morning about what a fabulous pro he's turned into.
Yeah.
Had 37 points 2 nights ago for the Utah Jazz. Anyway, we hope everybody enjoys college basketball this weekend. And we hope to see you again next Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. Central Time on our Sports Talk program for the United States Sports Academy. Have a great week in sports, everyone.